Hello everyone, this is part 7 of What If Naruto Was Female Orochimaru's Target, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Rasa looked at his children. They were set to leave for Konoha today. The invasion of Am would begin a week after their and the other Suna forces' arrival. He watched them with a mixture of pride, worry and regret. All three had matured after the Chunin exams, and he'd seen fit to promote each. Temari worked on her over-reliance on her war fan. Kankuro got better at operating multiple puppets. Gaara had demonstrated the largest change. No longer was he lost to his own madness, an infliction borne by Rasa's choices, the Kazekage lamented. He trained harder, working on his endurance and taijutsu. His sand techniques improved and he had even started making amends to the villages. It was not easy to send them to a war zone. He was their leader and truly hadn't treated them as his children, but he had a father's worry all the same. His children needed to be strong, Suna needed to be strong. Everyone needed him to be stronger still. Strong enough to be near heartless to his children, sacrifice his wife and keep Suna afloat with no support from the daimyo. He'd done it for so long, the cold veneer eventually just became what he was. No one liked him and it was arguable no one truly respected Rasa the man. They endured Rasa the Kazekage because they had no choice, because no one could lead Suna as he had. He wanted to bridge that gap. He wanted to be a family again, to embrace his children as a father should. They managed to grow closer to each other and he hoped they had space for him. But he may never see them again. There was no guarantee they'd return or that the invasion would be successful. So, why could he only give commands and tell them to do Suna proud? Why couldn't he tell them he was proud and loved them dearly? That he was a cold man because he believed it to be the only way to accomplish anything, to keep his village viable. The loss of his wife, by his own design, only exacerbated his embrace of a facade. Because the guise of the Kazekage had been the only way he'd known how to act for so long and it couldn't change in a day, on a whim. The trio left, none referring to him as father but as Kazekage-sama. Perfectly respectful and accurate. That's what he'd been to them and they may depart from the world thinking he only saw them as weapons and tools, as reflections on Suna's might and potential. The children of a monster, an unfeeling man that would do anything for power. In the quietest parts of his mind he'd admit his jealousy for Minato Namikaze. He'd ask, why was he so beloved? Didn't he sacrifice his child? Didn't he do all he could to keep Konoha strong? Were they really so different? To Rasa's mind, they weren't. And yet, Minato was respected in every nation, every hidden village. Iwa hated him, feared him, but respected him. Rasa was just a wielder of a second-tier Kekkei Genkai and leader of the weakest of the Big Five, only Kiri's civil war changing the designation. So many burdens, so many decisions. But Suna was recovering, they were gaining their strength and pride back. Just a few more years and everything would be worth it. A few more years. Orochimaru led Naruto to a secret lagoon Sunad and she would visit when they were younger. She relished the opportunity to indulge in a brief respite. One of her major plans had recently come together. Naruto also needed it. Since he'd been informed of his leadership position, and the assassination attempt by that lowly worm, Naruto had been pushing himself harder and harder in his training. His only real breaks were missions, as even if his physical body was resting, he still had clones undertaking some task for him. She could appreciate the diligence but he'd been nearing a burnout at the exact worst time for one. So, she requested he join her and forbade any training for the rest of the time before the invasion. The timing worked out perfectly. He'd been working so hard, he didn't remember today was his birthday. His teammates and friends were planning something at the recently finished Uzumaki Manor but she'd have him all to herself before then. She hadn't told her student where they would be going, only that he'd need swimwear. As they made the final leg of their trip she found it adorable how he tried not to stare, her sheer purple kimono with red accents stopping at the middle of her thigh and showing her curves. Such a gentleman, she'd have to rid him of that once he was older. They came upon the lagoon and Naruto had to admit it was picturesque, clear water shaded by tall trees. It was quiet and peaceful. He understood why Tsunade and Orochimaru would want to keep it a secret. That, and their other teammate was a self-described super pervert. Speaking of, Naruto tried his best not to perv on Orochimaru as she rid herself of her kimono to show the black and purple two-piece bikini she was wearing. He prayed his hormones wouldn't betray him in the immediate future. Naruto heard a splash, signaling Orochimaru had entered the water. He removed his blue shirt and sandals, leaving only his orange swim trunks. As he prepared to get into the water, he noticed there was no signs of the burns he endured when fighting Deidara. The Mad Bomber and Sasori of the Red Sands attacked his and Team 7 as they were returning from their mission in the Land of Snow. It was Kakashi's keen senses that allowed them to avoid the initial ambush, but they couldn't escape the fight. Both teams of Konoha Nin were able to avoid the initial blast thanks to Kakashi. He'd been alerted to two upcoming presences, his senses as sharp as any Inuzuka's. Both teams tensed, but not for the same reasons. Team Kurenai had trained and planned in order to take out any pair of Akatsuki members, all but the leader and his angel. Orochimaru made it clear retreat and avoidance was the only tactic for them. None of their plans accounted for an additional team. It could make things easier or harder. Kakashi knew who those two were, knew how significant a threat even one could be. Fighting them and protecting his comrades would be near impossible, especially as he was going to tell his team something they weren't going to like. Team, you need to stay back, these two are beyond you. No arguments, he snapped before Sasuke and Kiba could levy their complaints. He understood not wanting to be sidelined, but this wasn't going to be the kind of fight that allowed for mistakes. One wrong move meant death. You ruined my art, Deidara said from the sky, riding a clay owl. No need for all the talk, let's just grab the fox and go. Sasori said, having arrived on the clearing. They'd chosen well, no trees or cover anywhere near. Two long-distance fighters, one with aerial superiority. Kakashi immediately uncovered his Sharingan as Naruto created 20 shadow clones. 10 of the clones, along with the original and Shikamaru, dashed toward Sasori, leaving the rest with Kurenai, Shino and Kakashi. Rasengan, one of the clones roared as it pounced on Sasori. It hit the puppeteer's shell but was taken out by its tail at the same time. Now the real Sasori was revealed. Naruto thought the man-turned-puppet looked smug as he retrieved a storage scroll and unsealed a new puppet. The Sandaime Kazekage, just as Orochimaru said he'd go for. She fought with and against Sasori and said the man had a pattern of escalation. Because of that, there was opportunity for weaker but forewarned combatants to take him out if they planned well and kept sharp. The puppet charged toward Naruto and Shikamaru at great speed, but the Uzumaki met its charge with one of his own, blade drawn. He blocked the poison blade of the Kazekage puppet and performed a replacement with a clone when Sasori unleashed the dozens of hands sealed within the Kazekage's arm. The arms continued toward the real Naruto, but several of the shadow clones were ready. Wind style, crescent blade barrage. The Fuyuten jutsu performed by expelling sharp wind blades from the mouth in successive fashion. They tore through the wooden hands and Naruto saw Sasori start to get annoyed as he pulled the Kazekage back. The puppet then shot forward the iron sand the Kazekage was known for. That was the signal, both Naruto and Shikamaru knew. Two shadow clones performed two distinct jutsu, one water style, Torrent Blast, a Suten jutsu that forms and compresses water chakra in the stomach before expelling it with enough force to break bone and render one unconscious. The second performed Lightning style, Focused Bolt, a Raiten jutsu that concentrates the chakra at the tips of the index finger before emitting a thin, concentrated burst of lightning toward a target. The two jutsu combined and hit the oncoming iron sand, momentarily disrupting Sasori's magnetic control. The real Naruto was busy preparing his own jutsu. He could have gone with several alternatives, but this just had the dual purposes of destroying the puppet and distracting Sasori. Lava style, Burning Geyser. Molten rock shot up beneath the Kazekage puppet, the intense heat destroying it. Just for the briefest of moments, Sasori displayed his shock. They hadn't known the Jinchuriki had a bloodline, having no reports of him using that type of jutsu. Sasori attempted to retrieve more scrolls but found he couldn't move. Multiple string light formation, multiple clones that had surrounded Sasori said. Their chakra capacity making sure even the S-rank ninja couldn't simply overpower them. Ninja art, Shadow Sewing Jutsu, Shikamaru muttered and sent several shadow threads towards Sasori's chakra core, piercing it multiple times. The former Suna ninja was no more. Naruto looked across the clearing. Deidara was down and Shino was approaching him with a chakra suppression tag. Naruto watched as the blonde bomber had a grin, something so wrong given the circumstance. He was already molding chakra when he performed the replacement with Shino. The water style, gummy wall was thrown up but not in nearly enough time. The explosion rocked the clearing, burning Naruto and knocking him out, along with his clones. As he was passed out, Naruto got memories of the fight. His clone informed Kakashi of Deidara's weakness for lightning as they watched the Iwa Nin take to the skies. Suddenly, Deidara started hurtling toward the ground. Another clone realized it was Kurenai-sensei. Due to his hatred for Itachi, the blonde had been developing a resistance to optical genjutsu, but Kurenai-sensei was a master of the art and focused on the other senses, like the inner ear, which affected balance. The clones tossed kunai in the air, multiplying them with the kunai shadow clone jutsu and following it up with the lightning style, chain lightning jutsu. Kakashi must have taken his eyes off Deidara for a moment, which is why he missed the swap with the clone. When Naruto returned to consciousness, everything hurt. He could tell he was healing, but the burns were unpleasant and he felt like he may have broken or fractured ribs. Being clutched tightly by the talons of some clay bird was not helping matters. He was high up, extremely high up. This was not an ideal scenario and he had to play things just right so he could survive. Naruto ran through what he could do. He could move his hands, but too much movement would alert Deidara. He needed to end this as fast as possible. He could see his team trailing behind him and hoped they were close enough to catch him. Slowly, gently and ignoring the pain, Naruto performed the hand sign for creating a Fuin Bunshin and had it appear right beside Deidara. The original Naruto immediately summoned a kunai, ran lightning chakra through it and stabbed it into the bird, causing it to falter and release him. The Fuin clone managed to apply the chakra suppression seal, so both ninja were falling helplessly through the sky. Naruto passed out before hit the ground. He was told Kakashi caught him before he could hit the ground. A face full of water brought Naruto out of his thoughts as he sputtered in reaction. The laughter of his sensei filled his ears. He used his shirt to wipe his face before looking at his attacker, questioningly. Kikuku, you were thinking too hard. The point of this is to relax. Or am I not good company, Naruto-kun? No, that's not it, you are. Sorry, just thinking back to when Sasori and Deidara attacked us. That was well executed. Even if that sacrificial idiocy you're inflicted with flared up. Orochimaru said, wading in the water. Naruto didn't respond. The fight may have looked easy, Kiba sure seemed to believe so, but given the copious amount of information, the team's abilities and the planning abilities of Inara and Aberrane, there were just too many contingencies in place not to overwhelm an enemy that didn't expect you to be much a threat. Naruto finally entered the water, glad it was relatively warm. Orochimaru turned her back as Naruto adopted a mischievous smile. She splashed him, that was a declaration of war. If he didn't retaliate, she couldn't really respect him, he reasoned. What he was about to do was because of her, she was sorta asking for it. He immediately became uncomfortable with that line of thought but persisted to execute his revenge. Naruto cupped his hands together, leaving a narrow space between. Channeling some Sutin chakra into his hands, he forced a low-powered and tiny stream of chakra through the opening, dousing the back of Orochimaru's head. She swiftly turned to her apprentice and saw him whistling while looking everywhere but at her. She smiled. So, you want to challenge the Snake Sannin? She spoke with false menace. I'm sorry, what do you mean, Shushu? Naruto hamming up his innocent act, but a smile kept appearing on his face, a sign of his guilt. Oh. My apprentice has grown arrogant. Do you think you're the only one to master all 5 nature types? Of course not, Orochimaru-sama. I just did it before adolescence is all. He said innocently, but a hint of smugness laced his words. He had to swim out of the way of oncoming water wave. And several more after that. Kikuku, is retreating all you can do? I thought you had more fight than that. How disappointing. Orochimaru was interrupted as she felt pulled underwater. Once submerged, she saw it was a localized whirlpool that drug her under. It dissipated and she was free to move once more. Orochimaru cut through the water at impossible speeds, startling Naruto. She almost got him, attempting to grab him underwater, but Naruto used his chakra to submerge him further and then created more distance from his mentor. Undaunted, Orochimaru continued her chase, Naruto managing to narrowly avoid her several times. However, eventually his luck ran out and he was in the Snake Sannin's embrace. Nowhere to run, she whispered in his ear, sending a thrill to his core. Can we talk about this? About you attacking your dear teacher from behind? I was framed. We're alone. That's what they want you to think. Oh, really? And who is this they? Orochimaru didn't get a verbal response, instead she felt Naruto grab onto her and go underwater once again. She didn't know what to make of her student's newfound assertiveness until she saw a most displeasing vision, Konan, hovering above them, and if she were here it was more than likely Pain was here as well. This wasn't good. She watched as Naruto made dozens of clones and each began weaving hand signs. Water style, water lance was the jutsu being performed and several pressurized jets of water launched into the sky, but Am's angel avoiding them deftly. That was not unexpected as the clones continued to weave hand signs. Those jets became inky black clouds that rained oil on the paper ninjutsu user. Water style, Onyx Rain. The manipulation is similar to the Nadime's water style, Bite of the explosive water dragon, in that requires a secondary manipulation of a pre-existing suit and jutsu. One Naruto emerges from the water, his hands forming the tiger seal, and then waves of fire spew from his mouth. Fire style, Sea of Flames requires the user to store air in his cheeks and expel the chakra from there so it is possible to inhale and continue the process. As the flow can be slightly uneven, it gives the look of waves. Unexpectedly, a chubby orange-haired ninja with piercings throughout his face stood in front of the fire jutsu and absorbed it. The well-fed nin was taken off guard when the Kusanagi emerged from underwater, even piercing the Naruto in front of him before going through his head. The body collapsed and the clone dispelled into a cloud of smoke. Konan was now on the shore, her paper jutsu ineffective with her covered in oil, at least for the time being. 5 more bodies now appear on the water. Naruto Uzumaki, come with me and I may spare the traitor. The one with spiky orange hair said. The response was a numerous amount of tentacles attempting to entrap each of the ninja present. They all took to the air to avoid them, leaving them vulnerable. Several hidden shadow snakes break through the water's barrier and wrap around the multi-fist shinobi, intending to pull him down. Instead, the snakes are severed by his bladed tail and the remaining bodies are grasped by his hands. He gave a powerful pull and Orochimaru was now on the surface. As the Asura path pulled Orochimaru up, the long-haired human path was closing the distance, intent on taking the soul of the snake summoner. It arrived before she could react, hand around her throat, but when the ninjendo technique was activated, Orochimaru turned into mud. The human path didn't have time to consider its folly as its feet were encased in ice and a kunai with an exploding tag appeared in front of it, going off without leaving it any chance of escape. 2 bodies were down and while not angered, Pain was not amused. Both Orochimaru and Naruto were running out of air, they'd have to go to the surface soon. They were outnumbered and Orochimaru was quickly putting together these bodies may have some shared abilities given the Rinnegan each wielded. She had little in the way of information, outside of Pain being able to repel anything that came near him. It wasn't good, but she could turn things around, she had to. The Deva path watched as 2 olive-green snakes, of impressive size, came from below. One headed toward the animal path, another toward the Asura path. Almighty push, the path spoke and the large summons were forced back, hitting several trees before dispelling. Running out of air and options, Orochimaru and Naruto came to the surface, each behind one of the paths, swords drawn. She chose the animal path, Naruto chose the Asura path. The Asura path's tail pierced Naruto before his sword could make contact, which resulted in smoke, the animal path deflecting the Kusanagi but not able to avoid the follow-up strike, decapitating it. Every Naruto left underwater came to the surface and began attacking. Most of the remaining clones were dispelled by the Asura path's projectiles and multi-arm attacks. The real Naruto tried to cut the Deva path, even managing to cleave into the chakra rod the path generated, but he was too slow to avoid the next one, as he took a stab to his right leg before being kicked in his midsection, flying away due to the force. The Asura path was now engaging with Orochimaru directly, her Kusanagi doing well but not managing to put the path down. Without warning, she was stabbed in the back at the near her left shoulder and stabbed in the stomach. She hit the water, barely managing enough chakra to stay on the surface before she was kicked in the face by the Asura path hard enough to make her flip to her back. She looked to see the 3 bodies Naruto and she had managed to defeat had returned. Naruto saw one of the paths collecting the bodies and then throwing them into a thing before they returned fully healed. They were in trouble. He didn't have much time to think, creating a whirlpool, much more powerful than he had earlier. Orochimaru sunk to the bottom, taking advantage of the delayed death strike. Naruto summoned dozens of clones again and performed the ninja art, smokescreen jutsu. Naruto sent a clone underwater to get Orochimaru, removing the rods from her body as the real Naruto did the same to his own. The Deva Path was not bothered by the smokescreen. Activating his jutsu once again, he blew it away, and from the sounds of it multiple clones as he heard them puff. When the smokescreen cleared, he saw the Jinchuriki and his master, both on their last legs. The surroundings were quiet, only the sounds of the birds chirping filled the area. The paths watched as the injured pair returned to their feet and made a desperate charge, but the damage had taken its toll. Both were stabbed multiple times but still alive. The Deva Path activated his universal pull technique and Orochimaru helplessly flew toward him. With grim satisfaction, the Asura Path plunged a chakra rod into her heart, killing the turncoat. Her final punishment for thinking she could defy God wouldn't be her death, but knowing she failed to protect the motivation for her treachery, the Jinchuriki would die regardless. The disruption from the rod caused a shift in reality, and all the paths saw it wasn't Orochimaru they killed but the Naraka Path. They all performed the Genjutsu Dispel technique but felt it try to be cast again. It was confusing, nothing was around to cast it. Nothing but almighty push. The Deva Path yelled and expended a good deal of chakra to focus his attack. Soon he heard numerous puffs but the end of the birds chirping. It was an auditory Genjutsu, and given the amount of clones, the paths reasoned it likely came from the Uzumaki. They had no information on him wielding any Genjutsu of note, and the lapse in intel had come with a cost. The rest of the paths were fed up, mimicking the real Nagato's emotional state. He saw Konan return, free of the oil and ready to fight once more, but he instructed the paper clone to dispel. He wanted to do this, for the blasphemous actions had arisen his ire. Deep in the forest, sat Orochimaru and Naruto. She'd healed given her special replacement technique, and Naruto was almost back to full capacity due to the Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto got confirmation his Genjutsu had been disabled and pain would be coming for them soon. The Genjutsu, what he called Genjutsu, Chidori, was him thumbing his nose at Kakashi, who claimed only a Sharingan wielder could perform his Chidori when Naruto offered a jutsu trade. He was thankful Kurenai Sensei had increased the team's Genjutsu training, including how to layer illusions and how to attack multiple senses. He welcomed the development as it was helping end his blush. Orochimaru had come out of her replacement technique completely naked and hadn't seemed fully aware of it until it was pointed out. The Sannin made a mental note to include some seduction training so he wouldn't fall apart at the sight of a naked woman. Shushu, they ended my Genjutsu. Were they fooled long enough to take one of them out? Yay. The one that healed the others, but it pissed them off, so there's that. We need to increase our numbers and buy time. I know you hate it, but use the Edo Tensei. No. I'm totally fine with it. Naruto created 2 Yang release shadow clones with control seals implanted in them and retrieved the DNA samples he had. He performed the jutsu just as Orochimaru was doing the same. 2 caskets emerged, while Naruto's clones just transformed into his 2 revived nin. When the techniques were done, Deidara and Kisame stood beside the Shodai and the Nadaime Hokage. Naruto gave Deidara some of the special clay the missing ninja died with and gave Kisame Samehada, and the 2 took off, one in the air and one on the ground. The first 2 Hokage simply looked at Orochimaru and he in bemusement. You should have never created that jutsu, brother. I shouldn't have done a lot of things, but it's too late to change that. You, Uzumaki, why am I here? Tobirama said, having sensed the boy's lineage through his chakra. He was clearly an Uzumaki and also a Jinchuriki. Okay, quick rundown. There is this organization hunting down Jinchuriki like myself. Side note, we're all pretty much treated like total shit, so thanks for that, Hashirama-sama. Anyway, the leader attacked my Shushu and I and is extremely powerful. He holds the Rinnegan, the eyes of the Sage of 6 Paths, but appears to have separated his abilities into 6 different bodies. Each body has an ability, one can create advanced weaponry, another has control over attractive and repellent forces. One can absorb chakra and renders ninjutsu useless. We don't know about the other 2. Orochimaru added and then gave the physical descriptions for the ones they had information on. Let's go, brother, Tobirama said, which surprised Hashirama. And why would I do that? Open your senses, clearly the boy is Mito's successor and we are near Konoha. Who is to say this man won't target the village? Besides, the strapling is injured and can't fight as he is. Although he knew how serious this was, his life was on a line, Naruto wanted to justify his injury to his idol but realized this wasn't the time. Fine, brother. As soon as he answered, the forest shook with the sounds of high-yield explosives. That caused the Senju brothers to depart immediately. Both Orochimaru and Naruto stayed where they were, there choosing to take the break the Edo Tensei allowed them. The Snake Sanon's mind fast at work for a counter-strategy, and every moment she could have to plan the better. While Naruto was filling the returned Hokage on the situation, Deidara had come across the animal path, who was on top a bird summons. The explosion release uses wasted no time attempting to pepper the path with his explosive creations, but the bird was agile in the air and avoided direct damage. The two flew above the trees and frustrated sat in for the once dead shinobi, so much so he forewent any offense, only focusing on speed to close the distance. Once he did, he leapt off the clay bird and using his body exploded in the air. It took out the bird, but the animal path jumped off its summon right before impact and landed on a multi-headed dog. When Deidara reformed, he continued to lay explosive after explosive, but it only increased the dog's power as it grew more and more heads. The animal path summoned another animal, a rhino, to accompany the dog as they tried to keep Deidara occupied, at least until the human path could arrive, as it was rapidly approaching. The animals were dealing damage while the dog absorbed all of Deidara's offense, much to his annoyance. The bomb enthusiast started to flood the area with his C4 explosives and watched as not even the dog's summons could handle it. The animal path, too, had succumbed, but the area of effect was limited and the human path had not been infected and managed to remove the Edo's soul before it could explode again. However, the path did not avoid the wood spike that pierced its head. The Deva path looked as the Asura path lay headless. The same hadda interrupted the chakra receivers long enough for Kisame to cleave its head off. Until that point, the former Kiri swordsman's attacks had been rendered ineffective, the Preta path absorbing all he could muster while Deva and Asura retaliated. He immediately pushed the sword away from the undead ninja. Kisame started weaving hand signs again for another Sutenjutsu, his water shark bomb, and just like times previous it was absorbed, but Preta was kicked back by the Shodai Hokage. Almighty push, the Deva path said, avoiding the attack of the second Hokage as he sent the man out of the lagoon. Kisame followed suit, now pressing the attack, having abandoned his ninjutsu. It was clear the man wasn't as good in unarmed combat as the Deva path managed to stab him several times with the chakra rod. The Nadaime returned and the pair were attacking in tandem, starting to overwhelm the path. The Deva path performed his jutsu again, repelling the Suten masters as, through the shared vision, he saw the Preta path get its face caved in by the Shodai. 5 seconds. The Nadaime said, but the Deva path didn't react. All three Edo Tensei started peppering the lone path with various water jutsu, managing to dodge most of them until he was cornered and had to perform the almighty push again. As soon as he did, the three ninja were on him. He was getting attacked from multiple sides, blocking 2 strikes left him open for a third. The attacks were relentless and the path was growing increasingly frustrated. A hard left straight from Kisame sent him flying back, but he welcomed the space. Skidding out of the lagoon, onto dry land, the Deva path performed his most powerful technique. Chibaku Tensei. The surrounding area became overturned as the extreme pull of the gravity technique took hold. Each ninja tried to fight the attractive force but couldn't, and soon each were entombed into a small satellite. The chakra use was straining enough that Nagato faltered, causing a short disconnection from his path. He recovered and made his way toward Orochimaru and Naruto, at least where he'd assumed they'd be. Orochimaru and Naruto saw the moon-like object being created and how their remaining Edo Tensei were encased within. They didn't know how many more paths were left, but they did know they would be on their way. Neither were in perfect shape. Orochimaru had expelled a good bit of chakra with the summoning and restoring herself. Naruto's leg healed, mostly, but he still didn't have his full mobility. They were low on time and needed a strategy. You should leave, the Uzumaki said. He wants me alive so I may be able to buy some time for reinforcements to arrive. If they haven't arrived already, it means something is happening within the village. Still doesn't change, he only wants to kill one of us. Immediately, he only wants to kill one of us immediately. I have faith you'd come rescue me. Flattery at a time like this. Kikuku, I may blush. I take that to mean you aren't leaving. Naruto asked. No, I'm not leaving, so get ready. Naruto wasted no more time trying to convince her to leave, instead he began centering himself. He didn't have a foolproof way to utilize the Kyuubi's chakra, but he'd found success in not thinking about it as a matter of control but an experience to endure. similar to a surfer's relationship to the wave. The metaphor became something of a mantra, and as Naruto delved deep into the chakra core, he reminded himself to embrace the wave, to be one with it. He repeated it over and over as he drew more and more of the Kyuubi's chakra out, going out of the zero-tailed state to form an initial cloak. One tail became two, embrace the wave, he thought as two became three, and he stopped pulling. Must you repeat that insipid phrase every time you abuse my power? Jermaine. You know good damn well my name is not Jermaine. I'm kinda busy here, and if you just tell me your name I wouldn't have to guess, Jiro. The Kyuubi scoffed and said nothing more, ending the conversation just in time for the Deva path to arrive, alone. He pulled both Konoha ninja toward him, grabbing each by the neck and slamming them down. Naruto swatted the hand away with a tail, Orochimaru turned into mud while the real Kunoichi darted toward Pain from his flank, Kusanagi gleaming in the sunlight. He let go of Naruto and created a chakra rod to meet the legendary sword. The rod was cleaved in two, but it halted its momentum enough to spin away from the next swipe. He grabbed Naruto's wrist, narrowly avoiding a Rasengan and tossing the boy away. He repelled Orochimaru when she attempted to attack his blind side, and she slammed into a tree. The Jinchuriki was back, taking furious swipes, but Pain defended the attack, kicking Naruto in the stomach in response and then hitting him in the jaw. He didn't expect the Jinchuriki to absorb the blow, nor to grab his arm and proceeding to kick the Rinnegan wielder in the ribs. Pain was taken off his feet due to the force, which was amplified by a pair of great breakthrough jutsu performed by teacher and student. Pain landed, feet first, on a tree and kicked off. Orochimaru performed the hidden shadow snake hands jutsu, planning to stall his charge, but Pain avoided them and continued forward. There was a clang of sword against chakra rod. Pain attempting several thrusts while Orochimaru would deflect them or dodge. Pain overcommitted on one such attack, and the snake Sannin rotated away from the attacking arm, swirling the Kusanagi behind her back before bringing it up, aiming to slash at his face. He quicking repelled her again but sent a chakra rod toward in as well. Naruto swatted the rod and re-engaged. His body was able to handle this much of the Kyuubi's chakra for long, and he felt his body starting to give under the strain, which made keeping calm and sent it exponentially more difficult. He charged, ignoring the Pain, trying his best to land a significant strike on Pain. But he was outmatched, and Pain began to batter him, punching combinations connecting to Naruto's face before he was knocked away again and found his stomach pierced with a chakra rod, ending his Biju cloak. He then repeated the tactic Naruto interfered with as Orochimaru charged at him again. Without her student to block the rod, she too found herself impaled by Pain's weapon. The path didn't show it, but he was inwardly relieved. He could feel the Edo Tensei trying to break free, and he had been pushed harder than he expected. He walked over to the Uzumaki, in a different lifetime someone he may have looked at as family, but now a means to an end. The boy, battered and bleeding, his left eye swollen shut and barely hanging on to consciousness. He picked him up by his neck, making sure not to do any more damage. This may mean very little to you, but your sacrifice will bring about a lasting peace, he said as he darted off with the boy, the snake Sannin helpless to stop him. It's unfortunate, had the Kyuubi been sealed into some else, I could have used someone of your talents. I get why she betrayed us for you. He saw the boy's lone functioning eye widen. You didn't know. Had I agreed to find a way to keep you alive after the extraction, she wouldn't have left. But I'm a god and I don't make deals. Why, you're no more a god than I am a giant. Naruto struggled to say. You don't need to believe me, your opinion doesn't matter. Naruto really detested this smug prick and wanted nothing more than to shut him up permanently. However, the rod in his gut made molding chakra near impossible. Suddenly, Naruto felt the grip around his neck tighten as Pain began moving faster, but after a minute, the path simply collapsed as if its strings had been cut. Naruto lost the battle for his consciousness as he laid on the forest floor. Nagato. Konan spoke. She rarely used that name, the name of a weak boy too afraid of his own power and content to lean on his friends. The name of a failure, naive to the truths of this world. He'd cast off that name and all the weaknesses attached to it, but for her, his one remaining friend, he'd still acknowledge it as she was there before he transcended into the god of this miserable world. What is it, Konan? Itachi, Kisame, Deidara, Sasori. All dead, all defeated, going after the same target. Konoha knows, and thanks to Orochimaru, the Jinchuriki was prepared to face them. I have no doubt he'd be similarly prepared for Kakazu and Hidden. Add to that, we have an epidemic that affects only our shinobi. In mission mortality rates are rising, some are even getting sick from training. I don't see these as coincidences. Neither do I. They could have done this thinking it would soften me up, make me easier to kill. Or Konoha is planning an all-out invasion, one our people are not prepared for. Sacrifices are necessary, Konan. You couldn't expect that sacrifice would be on everyone but us. Sacrifices that led to something better. We are no longer hidden. At least one major village knows our plans and have all but crippled our efforts. It would be safe to assume Suna knows. Iwa hasn't looked into our real motives because we're too valuable, but they could. Maybe this is a sign we should rethink our plan. No. This is the only way. According to who? This isn't even our plan, it's his. Some stranger that came to us claiming to be Madara Uchiha. We wanted to save Am, remember? And have we? Are their lives better now than under Hanzo? Are they happy under the protection of a god? In the grand scheme doesn't matter. I have to be able to shed these attachments. Borders only limit us, allow us to see other people as somehow fundamentally unlike us, and outgroup. It may have been Madara's plan, but it has a greater chance of working than Jiraiya's way. He preached understanding to us and then trained the most prolific killer in modern shinobi history. Would you sacrifice even me? No one is immune from this, not even me. If Konan was dismayed by his answer, she didn't show it. You may be fine with the potential losses, but what about the reality that an invasion puts the entire plan at risk? Nagato, they may be able to even kill you. Not any single Konoha ninja, but all 3 Sannin have returned and they have several Junin of note. If you die, the plan dies with you. Then, we stop the invasion from ever happening. How do you plan on doing that? By giving Konoha something else to focus on. First, we'll take the Jinchuriki as they won't be expecting me to come for him personally. Then we'll release the boy's lineage. I'm sure Iwa would love to be able to torture the Yellow Flash's son. That'll spark a war, but we'll be a minor concern compared to Iwa. And if Iwa gets involved, Kumo will too, just for the chance to topple Konoha. You want to start another great ninja war. I thought the point of this was to end all the wars. It was, but I can't do that if we don't get the Jinchuriki. War is great for producing S-rank ninja and missing ninja that become disillusioned. The villages will be too depleted to stop us once we refill our ranks. I'll contact Kakazu and Hidden for a special assignment. We leave for Konoha in 3 days. The Deva path left, Nagato having voiced his thoughts on the matter. Konan's face was as emotionless as ever, but inside she was a storm of emotions. She finally saw how lost her last friend was. They were no longer fighting for the same goals they once shared, Yahiko's will. Nagato essentially died with his best friend, she reasoned, and she'd been enabling a husk of a man with too much power and too few connections to the world. He plunged the world into chaos, create countless orphans like them, lost and starving but with no Jiraiya to aid them. It broke her inside, the thoughts of what she was going to do, but it was time for her to stop being a mere supporting player. Konan, we have the Jinchuriki. Am's angel thought she'd feel worse about this. There was an uncomfortable calm within her, an acceptance of what would come next. It was simple, emotions so practiced that conscious thought wasn't needed. Nagato tried to gargle out words, demands to know why, but she wouldn't explain. Her friend had long since been lost to her, corrupted by Madara, and she'd been too complacent to save him. He bled out quickly, her cut on his neck made with the utmost precision. He felt only a moment's pain, but the rest of the time was like succumbing to a sedative. She didn't know if Yahiko would forgive her for what she's done up to this point, for twisting his will into something so ugly and extreme, but she'd have to face him once she crossed over. Konan resolved to stop thinking so much about what she owed the dead, instead deciding on what she could do for the living, starting with Am. She walked out of the cave Nagato and she were hidden in, her gate even. The light shining from the entrance felt like a heavy-handed metaphor, but she could appreciate it all the same. She had to destroy the Akatsuki to receive her new dawn. She continued out of the cave and greeted the party waiting for her, one of her conditions for aiding Konoha. Sensei. She was wrapped up in a bear hug almost before the word left her mouth. Jiraiya was something of a rolling stone, but Konan can feel he still cared. He was grieving the loss of another student. Unfortunately, there wasn't time to indulge. He'd have to put on a brave face and continue on. But for the briefest moment, teacher and student could mourn. After the hug ended, Jiraiya returned to Nagato and sealed his body in a scroll, then led Konan to Konoha and then to the Hokage's tower. Hiruzen was awaiting her, alone. Jiraiya was excused and the two village leaders were left to settle matters between them. Konan-san. Sarutobi-san. Before we begin, I must express my deepest gratitude. When I received your message I was unsure if it could be believed, but I am grateful it was true. Jiraiya informed me about your shared history, so I know words can't articulate the depths of your sacrifice, but I hope we can build something so this never happens again. I accept your words, but make no mistake, I hate Konoha. Because of Konoha my friends are dead. Because Danzo Shimura convinced Hanzo we were planning a coup, Yahiko lost his life and Nagato lost his way. I don't know if you ordered Danzo to act or simply didn't know, but that means you are either as vile as he was or negligent. I want no alliance with you, only to avoid needless deaths. A ceasefire, a treaty, call it what you wish, but I will not be involved with Konoha once I leave. Konan was taking a bold stance, but if Konoha attacked Am after Akatsuki ceased to exist, the other major villages not allied with them will assume the leaf is escalating towards some goal and will respond in kind. Sarutobi would simply damn himself to the violence he claims to not want. It also felt cathartic to tell this man about the mad dog he failed to control and the damage his actions, or inactions, inflicted on people. Hiruzen's facial expression didn't change, but he suspects this occurred around the time Danzo attempted to assassinate him, likely expecting Hanzo to help. He really was negligent, a fool that wanted to see the best in his former friend, to believe Danzo meant well, acted only in the interests of Konoha. The truth was both men lied to themselves and Danzo created an enemy that could have done an untold amount of damage had things been different. This was just another sign he shouldn't be in this chair, he wasn't fit to lead any further. I understand your position, and if there is nothing else, let's us begin. At the recently constructed Uzumaki Manor, several Konoha shinobi busy themselves preparing for a birthday party. Tayuya was handling the music. Karen, Hinata and Ino were setting up the food. Shizune had organized the presents. Tsunade was supervising, which translated into drinking, petting Tonton and making the occasional suggestion on decorations. Team Kurenai, along with Asuma, just returned with the cake. It was a round two-tier citrus cake with passionfruit filling and vanilla icing. The cake was decorated simply, blue frosting with orange spirals on top and a "Happy Birthday, Naruto" written on the cake board. Troublesome. Shikamaru spoke with seemingly zero prompting. Everyone, excluding Shino, turned to look at the Nara. He met their questioning looks and sighed. I get this sense when Naruto is being uniquely troublesome. It just went off. Multiple parties had looks of disbelief while Tsunade cackled. However, Shikamaru's words soon proved to be prophetic. Karen gasped and started shaking, muttering about multiple chakra signatures headed toward Orochimaru and Naruto. All in attendance charged towards the door but were sequestered by an Anbu agent, being ordered to stay in the residence. Tsunade could have overruled the agent, a purple-haired woman in a cat mask, but the agent informed the future Hokage that Sandaime-sama was aware of the situation and had a plan in action. All preparation for the party stopped as Karen utilized her sensory abilities to relay what little information she could. It was near impossible to remain at the new Uzumaki compound as she mentioned how Naruto and Orochimaru's chakra signature fluctuated often as if disrupted or they were seriously injured. As more of the fight unfolded, Karen understood less and less. The atmosphere was tense, especially when Karen informed the party one final enemy managed to incapacitate Orochimaru and flee with Naruto, but relief filled the room when she said the signature disappeared, similar to the 5 before it, and left Naruto. At that point, Tsunade made the decision to no longer wait. It was clear her friend and surrogate nephew needed help. She allowed Shizune, Karen and the rest of Team Kurenai to follow her, backing the stationed Anbu down. The pace they traveled increased when they witnessed the moon-like sphere was pierced and then decimated by wood constructs until 3 figures descended from the wreckage. The party discovered Orochimaru first. She'd taken the rod out but hadn't had the chakra to heal her injuries. Karen ran toward his mistress and offered her arm, frowning just slightly at being bitten, but it worked and the snake Sannin was healed. Once she was able to move, the Konoha ninja moved on to Naruto's location. What happened, Orochi? We were attacked by the Akatsuki leader. What about you? What delayed your response? We were told by an Anbu that Sensei had something in the works and not to interfere. But once Karen sensed you were injured and Naruto was being abducted, we figured the plan went pear-shaped and came running. Orochimaru said nothing in response. She concluded that if Hiruzen did have a plan, He hoped that she would be killed before it took effect while he could claim innocence. It wasn't the worst plan in the world, but it rested on a very large assumption that Pain wouldn't grow frustrated and kill Naruto, figuring catching the actual Kyuubi would be easier once it reformed, if he didn't have a method of breaking the seal in the first place. She would pay him back, but she needed to see her apprentice before anything. The group arrived to see two men standing over Naruto, one kneeling. Tsunade gasped in disbelief while the others cautiously approached. The slug Sanin turned to her friend and watched her shrug in a familiar gesture anytime Orochi crossed the line. She resolved to have a talk with her, but it could wait. Tsunade continued over to Naruto and saw her grandfather healing a stab wound. He still had a swollen cheek and right eye as well as bruising around his neck. She didn't speak to her departed family members, instead choosing to heal the damage that hadn't been seen to. In no time Naruto started to stir. The swelling had gone down significantly and the bruising was gone. He awoke a smiling Shoidai and Tsunade. Abakan. Yay, it's me. How are you feeling? Like I lost a fight. Is Orochimaru okay? I'm fine, his mentor spoke, having made her way to the group once she saw Naruto waking up. What happened? He just collapsed for no reason. I don't know, Orochimaru answered. So, Tsunade, you became a medic? Tobirama asked and Hashirama lit up. This is little Suna. My, you've grown so beautiful. Thank you, grandfather. The grandfather and daughter continued to speak as Tobirama paid attention to the male Uzumaki, having noted there was one more keeping her distance. He watched the boy activate a storage seal, after he'd released the reanimation which dispelled in a cloud of smoke, on his wrist, resealing the same header and retrieving a small rag. He then began to draw a small orb of water from the atmosphere, a method startling similar to Tobirama's own, the former Hokage noted. As a final surprise he saw the boy freeze the orb, making it solid ice and wrapping it in the rag to use as a cold compress. I've never known an Uzumaki to have the Hyoten bloodline. Are you part Yuki? No, and I have no bloodline. Naruto said, holding the makeshift ice pack to his head. You don't need a bloodline to use the sub-elements, that's a myth. I see ninjutsu has advanced since my time. Tell me, who made this breakthrough? Was it Hiruzen? Tobirama watched the boy's face adopt a vicious scowl at the mention of his student. Time permitting he would get to the bottom of that. The Uzumaki had been a good ally and distant family, he couldn't imagine why one would hate Hiruzen. No one taught me, I figured it out on my own. Interesting. Is this talent why you were chosen? He saw another scowl. No. Granduncle, let's somewhere private and I'll fill you in on everything. Tsunade said, overhearing the discussion. He nodded and they prepared to move out. Naruto went to his team, all dressed rather casually. Hey, guys, what were you doing before you came here? We were at your home, Naruto. Kurenai asked and saw the boy's surprised face. Why? He knew he told them he'd be with Orochimaru at this time. They just looked at him and then each other. He doesn't know. Shino concluded. Naruto-san, today is your birthday, we were planning a surprise party. Oh. Naruto replied and tried to ignore the feeling in his chest. He hadn't celebrated his birthday in years, not since he thought the old man turned on him. I'm sorry the surprise was ruined guys, but I appreciate it. Nothing more needed to be said as they moved toward his home in silence. When they returned, Naruto saw who else was in attendance. Tayuya, who was yelling at Kakashi about his stupid excuses, Ino talking with Hinata while Asuma was speaking to Jiraiya. Once they noticed his return they yelled surprise and Naruto smiled brightly, scratching the back of his head as he suddenly felt very bashful. The party went on, as they ate and talked, Tsunade eventually returning with the first two Hokage. It felt overwhelming for the Uzumaki heir. 2 years ago he'd given up hope things would change, that he'd really make connections. He realized, now, his opinion of the village and his place in it was tied to his feelings toward the old man. Once he lost faith in Hiruzen, Naruto wrote off the entire village as being reflexively and resolutely against him. He couldn't believe they'd ever change, and if they could never accept him he could never be Hokage. He entered a mild depression when he stopped believing things could improve and had to let go of his first dream as well as the memories of the kind old man that said it were possible. Initially, Naruto concluded that Hiruzen had simply been lying to him in order to keep the spirits of the village's Jinchuriki up and him mentally stable. It was a bitter pill to swallow that he was manipulated by the Hokage. When he discovered his heritage and what Hiruzen kept from him, Naruto had too long believed the bastard as nothing but a craven manipulator to ever reconsider the Sandaim's motives. It was just more evidence he never would have permitted Naruto to be more than a war deterrent. After Ichiro's bombing attempt and the talk with Kurenai-sensei immediately following, Naruto thought about her words. About how he'd let his hatred for the old man cause him to channel at others. He had to conclude she was right, and if he were maintaining a negative view of the village, not that they'd done anything to change it, because of Hiruzen, then he wasn't being fair in the strictest sense. Maybe they could change, maybe his dream wasn't foolish. He hated it, but a part of him still wanted acceptance from the village, acknowledgement that he was of value. To receive that, he'd have to acknowledge them and allow the possibility they could change. As long as he let his antipathy for the Sandaime color his impression of everyone else, that could never happen. He didn't, however, think he could ever truly forgive or reconcile with the old man. He may have understood his reasons, the fact remained he preferred to save face than risk trusting Naruto, knowing he was all the Uzumaki had. It was a deep betrayal of the bond they shared. The man's vanity was clearly more important than anything they forged. But he didn't need Hiruzen anymore. He'd built a family, people he could trust and lean on. People that weren't just going to go away. He wasn't alone anymore. After the gift exchange, the party wound down. Naruto stepped out, retreating to the roof. Once he reached it, Naruto watched the sunset with a serene smile on his face. It had been an emotionally draining day, but one of his better birthdays, if not the best, save for the near-death experience. The air was starting to cool, as was common for the fall, but it felt nice. Soon, Naruto was joined by another party, the Nadaime Hokage. Nadaime-sama. Tobirama sat beside the Uzumaki. There is no need for such formality, not for a dead man, Naruto. Then what would you prefer I call you? Tobirama is fine. I may have a reputation as a joyless hardass, but I never made my family call me by my title. I'll keep that in mind, Nadaime-sama. Naruto said with a smile. Tobirama cracked one as well. Cheeky, like much of your clan. The legendary Senju sighed. I owe you an apology, Naruto. Not only as a Jinchuriki but as the future leader of the Uzumaki. Tsunade has filled me in on the major events that have occurred since my death. As much as I wish I could say I am surprised, the truth is everything she said made sense. It is not that I knew Hiruzen nor Danzo would do these things, it simply didn't fall outside their character. The man sighed again. Hiruzen was a preternaturally talented ninja with a caring nature. He was also one that soaked up flattery and praise. Not to mention slipping into sentimentality when logic was needed. Danzo was talented, nowhere near Hiruzen, but a boy with a great deal of potential. He was also overly rigid and given to dichotomous thinking and fanaticism. I overwatched the development and failed to curtail these flaws. You and yours have suffered for this, and I request your forgiveness. I forgive you. Besides, the old man is responsible for his own choices. He is but a part of you, will always feel some measure of responsibility for those you teach, especially when you assign him your successor. Naruto just nodded. He couldn't exactly relate. He's only ever taught things to children too young to have done anything too bad beyond pranks. What made you dedicate yourself to ninjutsu, especially at such a young age? The academy sensei were jerks and weren't going to teach any ninjutsu for 2 years, but several of my classmates would be learning clan techniques well before then. I decided if they weren't going to teach ninjutsu, I'd make my own and have a library filled with clan techniques to give my family. I didn't know the Uzumaki were a clan at that point, but I was determined to make them one. Bratty motivation, but the follow-through is commendable. Now, what about the sub-elements? Chakra isn't magic. We may not understand all of what it can do, but it does obey certain rules and it is naturally existing. Almost all chakra researchers agree on that. If that's the case, then why would it operate so contrary to matter that's chakra-free? You can make water vapor, water, even viscous liquids, but not ice. Or mud, stone, dust, but not lava. Didn't make sense to me, and since no one was around to tell me I was wrong, I never believed I couldn't do it. I may have had a bit of an ego as well. So, the dual elements required for the sub-elements isn't true. It is, but it's about how you mold that chakra. Those with Kekkei Genkai must have some genetic predisposition to combine their elements. It may be the case the real Kekkei Genkai is innately knowing how to merge and mold various elements, but because they are rarely born with more than 2 affinities, they didn't push themselves to see. Interesting. I must admit I am from an era that took it as holy writ only bloodline users could perform those types of nature transformation. To see that proven wrong is quite the treat. You mentioned lava and ice. Are those the only two you can currently utilize? Naruto started grinning, enjoying being able to show off for his idol. The only two that are even close to battle ready. He cupped his hands together and closed his eyes, focusing on his internal energy. Shortly, various strings of light was being emitted from his palm. Naruto then attempted to direct the energy, managing to send a beam the width of a pencil toward a nearby tree, creating a small hole. Lightning is already a plasma. Combined with water and you create a process of electrolysis and then ionization of the separated hydrogen, making the storm release. Increased power and control. Naruto wiped the beads of sweat that started to form on his head, still smiling. That is truly impressive, and to think you can mimic Kumo's signature bloodline. This pleases me greatly. It also affirms my decision, the Nadaime said and saw Naruto's puzzled gaze. In your study there are 2 scrolls, brother, and I left for you and the clan. I believe you will put the knowledge to good use. Now, I must depart. I need to see Saru before your master releases the jutsu. It has been a pleasure, Naruto. Naruto knew the man wouldn't be here long and nodded before saying goodbye. He watched the Nadaime leave and then laid back down on the roof as the last of the sun dipped below the horizon. Even with the abduction attempt, Naruto had to consider this the best birthday ever. Kikuku, it appears my apprentice has been keeping secrets from me. Naruto didn't jump when Orochimaru made her presence known. He'd gotten used to her sneaking up on him. She sat beside him, now dressed in a red kimono. I can't reveal everything to my rival. Naruto replied, cheekily. Ah, now you're learning. It, unfortunately, may be your final lesson. Naruto looked at her in confusion. Your apprenticeship was to last up to the invasion. I assume the invasion has been cancelled and there is no way Sarutobi will allow our arrangement to continue. Naruto frowned at that, knowing it was true. What happens now? Jiraiya will likely push for you to go on a training trip with him, and I think you should go. I would not have expected that. Naruto admitted. And I don't blame you. I may not have much use for Jiraiya, but he isn't completely worthless. Naruto chuckled, considering that high praise. A part of him was reluctant to go. He didn't want to leave his family and friends so soon after having made those connections. He didn't want to leave his team. He was sure he still had much to learn from Kurenai-sensei. Shika would get lazy if he weren't here to motivate him, and Shino would get all quiet and reserved. They made each other better, so to leave to focus solely on his development felt selfish. However, Naruto did want to get to know his godfather. Jiraiya hadn't been in the village much, and a training trip would provide ample time to build a relationship. He could also learn more about his father. Also, even if he only provided a sparring partner, training with Jiraiya would have to get him stronger, as he had no illusion he could defeat any of the Sannin without the aid of his teammates and weeks of planning. It still sucked that he wouldn't learn under Orochimaru anymore, someone that had supported him for longer than he initially knew, but if even she were recommending he do this, he couldn't deny the wisdom of the move. I guess it makes sense. Sucks I can't just keep learning with you. Kikuku, I'm not going anywhere. This is just the end of one phase of our relationship. Rig, I don't just allow anyone to see me naked and live to tell about it. She watched as the boy started to blush and scratched the back of his head. Kikuku, should I take it as a compliment that managed to stand out during a life and death battle? Such a little charmer. Since you aren't my shushu anymore, I can get you back for all your teasing, Tobayo. Oh, really? The snake Sannin moved closer, now whispering in the Uzumaki's ear, then I may just have to escalate before you can. She then kissed him on the cheek and laughed as his entire face reddened. Good night, Naruto-kun, she said between laughs, not giving her student a chance to respond. Naruto took a few moments to compose himself before returning inside. The blush was gone, so he was confident there were no witnesses to anything he'd done on the roof. He returned to the living room to see Shino and Shika seemingly in a heated debate. He was a little concerned as the two never argue. Guys, what's wrong? Oh, Naruto-san, maybe you can help us resolve this. Troublesome, I agree, we may need your input. Sure, what's wrong? Well, I was telling Shino if I got beat up in front of a girl I liked, I'd probably want to die from embarrassment. Whereas I believe I'd simply want to renounce my name and title while I went into hiding, from the shame. As we have no experience with this, we thought you might be able to help us out. Naruto grit his teeth at the pair of wise asses. If you tell me who you like, that can be rectified with ease, Tobayo. I believe Temari-san will be arriving soon. Shikamaru looked at Shino in mild surprise. He didn't think the Aberrane would turn on him just yet, but he was prepared. Well, lucky for you, we don't need to wait. We don't even need to leave. Oi, Te. Shikamaru was tackled by Shino in an effort to shut him up. Naruto stood in shock at what Shikamaru was about to say, before laughing and clutching his stomach. Shino, didn't anyone ever tell you not to play with fire? Especially not a raging freaking inferno. You can't handle that, you're not ready for that. What I am and am not ready for is my decision. Besides, it's not like she's notorious nor beats me down every day. He has a point. I thought Nara men were henpicked, but that's downright submissive. I'm nobody's bottom. And what about you, Shika? You say in front of an arena full of people, a man can't lose to a girl, troublesome, and then give up like a buster. Shikamaru bristled at Naruto's impression of him. That was very Buster-like. I was embarrassed. Shino added. You had a draw with a boy in cat pajamas. Shikamaru retorted. It was a manly draw. Not really, you had a weird twitch going on. Frankly, you both shamed Kurenai-sensei. Thank the sage I was there to clean things up, per usual. Naruto observed. Land of vegetables, land of vegetables. Oh. No. Neither of you are blaming me for that. Why not? You're a trouble magnet. Shikamaru responded. A short, trouble magnet. Shino added. With no guys. Screw both you shameful bastards. Tough talk for a half pint. Shikamaru, I believe you should have called it big talk to contrast with his lack of stature. I might be slightly shorter than you, but I'll wash both you scrubs. Let's step outside. Why? To show you who is the scrub. Spoiler warning, it is you. Troublesome, even I have some pride. Let's do this. The boys departed towards the backyard, oblivious or indifferent to the audience they'd attracted with their argument. The onlookers watched as the Chunin shinobi disregarded all technique and tactics in their bout of horseplay. It looked more like three brothers rockhousing than actual ninja combat. You're cute, little students are being adorable again, Kurenai, said Kakashi. I can't argue with you there. They've come a long way in a year. You've done well with them. Asuma praised his significant other. They made it easy. Well, not at first, but eventually they gelled. You considering taking another team in the future? Asuma questioned, as all three were Chunin. She could if she desired so. He saw her shake her head. Unless it was absolutely necessary, I couldn't imagine it. Those are my boys out there. I'd compare any future team I had to them, it wouldn't be fair. The three Chunin continued to chat as they watched the rest of Team Kurenai play. One partygoer, however, was not amused by their antics and let it be known. Stump, if you and those other two dipshits don't get in here and eat some motherfucking cake, I'll castrate all three of you tree-hugging bitches. Tayuya shouted from a window. Naruto looked sheepish from the ground. Shino adjusted his glasses and Shikamaru just muttered, troublesome. She slammed the window shut, believing she'd done enough. Shino, you need to control your chick. Shikamaru said. Shino's only response was for the buzzing to grow louder, but not loud enough to drown out Naruto's laughter. You know we need to talk about this. Tsunade said as Orochimaru and she made their way to the Hokage tower. She was upset with her friend and disappointed. If I hadn't resurrected them I would be dead. However angry you are at me, at least acknowledge that. Of course I wouldn't want you dead, but I have a feeling you didn't find DNA samples of my grandfather and uncle as a means of self-defense. You're right. I planned to use your great-uncle's jutsu to kill Sensei. Plans changed and an invasion was no longer necessary. Tsunade's eyes went wide. Orochi, you were going to invade Konoha. You know how many people you could have hurt, killed. Thousands. And they would have been worth it to kill Sensei. You know I don't care. And since I didn't do it, you shouldn't either. I know you can care. Oto would be a completely miserable place if you simply couldn't. Care is overstating it. I don't need my shinobi to live in squalor. If they are comfortable they are more productive. Indifference isn't malice, you know that. I don't care, but unless it becomes necessary I also see no value in causing harm. But Sensei was. Years after you left. No, that doesn't make sense. Orochi, what aren't you telling me? I have my reasons and once again, I didn't do it so it doesn't matter. It does if you still plan to kill him. You mean like he tried to kill me today? Tsunade looked surprised but waited for her friend to expound. He's had a specific Anbu watching Naruto and I for the entire time I've been training him. Except, yesterday and today. And it just so happens we get attacked by Pain with no backup in sight. He planned to have me die before his plan to stop Pain was enacted. Tsunade grimaced. Some of that could be chalked up to coincidence, but the problem is, ninja don't believe in coincidence. Sure, they've heard about them but have never seen them. Dig deep enough and you'll find someone pulling strings. There was a lot of missing information but she couldn't reject Orochi's conclusion. Tsunade didn't know if her former sensei believed she'd turn a blind eye to his dealings similar to how he did for Danzo, but she had no intention of doing that. He needed to be unseated. His agent bias against Orochi was leading him toward ruin and he'd done nothing to change that. The two legendary kunoichi arrived to the tower and headed toward the Sandaim's office. They could overhear him speaking to the Shodai and the Nadaime. The two women entered, causing the discussions to stop. The Sandaime immediately narrows his eyes at his once favorite student. That she would use such an abominable jutsu and bring back former Hokage while she were at it, he considered it more evidence of how rotten she was to the very core of her being. I assume you have come to release us? Tobirama asked. Yes, I have. Unless Sensei has something else to say. Have you said all you wanted to, Sarutobi-sensei? Get out of my office, Orochimaru. Now. Kikuku, I'll give you a moment with Tsunade, I'll be outside. She said and then exited the office. Saru, remember what I told you. Hiruzen grimaced but nodded at his teacher's words. Hashirama was too busy crying and hugging Tsunade to care about much of anything else, embarrassing Tobirama greatly. The three Senju said their final words and the first two Hokage went to meet Orochimaru, to return to the Pure Land. Tsunade wiped the unshed tears from her eyes before leveling a glare at her sensei. You hoped Orochimaru would be killed in the attack today. It wasn't a question nor an accusation. She's evil and will corrupt Naruto-kun along with who knows how many others. She's a threat, I wish you could see it. I'm not just some paranoid, old man. If you make her your enemy she will be your enemy. And nothing she's done has harmed Naruto, can you say the same? When Hiruzen didn't answer she continued, I'm not going to ignore people operating behind my back sensei, not even you. You wanted me to be Hokage but I won't be a puppet nor am I too tired to meet any challenges to my authority. I consider myself warned. Good, was the last thing the Senju princess said before departing for the night. Hiruzen waited several moments before doing the same but his destination was not home, not yet. He entered a secure Anbu facility, the operatives bowing in respect as he walked the halls. It didn't take him long to reach the interrogation room he was seeking. Ibiki had clearly been hard at work, the subject looked as if he was nearing his breaking point. That was fine, he was a disposable piece in this game. Hiruzen entered, instantly gaining the attention of his top interrogator and the man's latest subject. At ease, Ibiki, he ordered and the bearer of a man complied. Hiruzen took a seat at the table, beside Ibiki but across from the subject. You have exactly one chance to save your life. How? You will be my spy, you will inform me of everything Orochimaru does, where she goes and who she meets. No. Kabuto-san, I don't think you understand. I could have you killed right now for leaking my shinobi's whereabouts to Sasori. That's treason. But instant death would be a mercy. I could turn over the signed statement of AM's new leader to Orochimaru directly and let her do as she pleases. How many weeks do you think you'd spend dying under her care? Kabuto paled as a great deal of fear entered his eyes. Orochimaru would make him suffer for as long as she could. But worse than the torture, she'd lose all respect and fondness for the medic she saved from Sasori. He didn't want to continue to betray her but he wasn't self-sacrificial. He agreed to work with the Sandaime, hating himself more with every word spoken. Hiruzen, by no means, trusted the boy. If he provided good intel then it would be a plus but if he faltered or attempted to obfuscate for Orochimaru Hiruzen would show her the confession and plant a seed of mistrust in her other assets. Hopefully, she'd turn cruel and alienate more and more of them, people that would welcome Hiruzen's kindness and grandfatherly charm. Kabuto may not be enough to take her down but he'd be a start, the tipping point to her downfall. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.